So it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor.
Yes, absolutely. So before we get into your work, all of the wonderful things that you're doing, I want to begin with this, and I always do. 6 years ago, this pandemic really did change a lot as far as awareness of trauma, therapy, mental health, all of those things. How did you get through that era, and how has it refined the way that you work and live life today?
Well, Joe, the pandemic came and it was an interesting time in my life. I had been in a really dark place in 2019. I was physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually just, at a dark place. And I knew that I needed something. And one night I was watching a documentary and it was on ayahuasca. And I booked a trip in July and decided to go in January. So I flew down to Costa Rica and did a plant medicine journey. And when I came back, almost immediately, the pandemic had hit, the country started shutting down. And it was a profound time in my life to just slow down enough to really process and integrate what I learned during my plant medicine journey. And so for me, it changed everything. It changed my entire life. It changed my perspective. It pulled back the layers of the trauma and the difficulties that I had gone through in my life and helped me to gain so much clarity so that I could just begin to live life anew. It was an amazing time. And so it was a wonderful time for me to be able to slow down and take personal inventory of what was going on inside of me.
So let's get into exactly those changes and what you do now for a living. And I want to do that because there's a lot of titles. I want to put you in front of a bunch of kids. It's career day. Let's say they're 11 or 12 years old. You're in a school, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize everything and make it make sense to them?
Yeah, so, well, I'm an international award-winning author. Just published my memoir last April. It's called The Child I Left Behind, A Mother's Journey Toward Healing and Forgiveness. I'm a psychotherapist and a metaphysician and a successful entrepreneur. And my focus in life right now is really helping others to learn what is driving the vehicle of their life. Oftentimes we find ourselves busy on the hamster wheel of life and we're doing all of these things externally, focused on making ends meet, doing what the world expects us to do. And oftentimes, like me, finding myself, in a place where I was just exhausted, burned out, and just really not knowing what was going on with me. And so my work is about really slowing down enough to go within and find out what it is that's driving the vehicle of my life. And so I'm a psychotherapist that helps others, really learn what the wounds are within and help them to go within and kind of peel back those layers and gain perspective on what they really needed when they were wounded and help them to navigate that, heal that wound, and to find a new life that's heart centered, that's allowing them to live from their authenticity and their truth.
So, what did you want to be when you were 12 or 13 years old? What was your dream job?
I always thought I was going to be a teacher. I wanted to teach. And it's interesting because as a psychotherapist, I get to do that all the time, but in a much deeper and more profound way, really being able to touch lives really in meaningful ways.
So take me back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised, and what were the seeds, the early tenets that were planted that allowed you to find therapy and healing and helping people? What were those pieces that have evolved into who you are and finding your voice in life?
Well, Joe, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. I was born there until I was 10. And then my parents divorced, and I moved to Detroit and grew up in the ghettos and really in poverty and just really lived in survival mode for many years and really was catapulted into adulthood after my parents divorced. I was 9 years old when they divorced, and we left Cincinnati when I was 10. And I was really became a parentified child and ended up taking on a lot of adult responsibilities at such a very young age. And by the time I was 12, I was in a relationship with a guy who was 15 and was pregnant by the time I was 13. and just to get out of an abusive relationship. My mother was in an abusive relationship with a boyfriend that just really just caused so much chaos and upheaval in our lives. We moved every 6 months. We were getting evicted or didn't have enough money to pay for rent. And so for me, the beginning of my life was just sheer survival mode, just figuring out how to get out of that. And getting pregnant wasn't unusual in my family. My mother was a teen mom, my grandmother was a teen mother, my great grandmother was a teen mother, and I didn't consciously, recognize that, but I knew that it was a way out. And so for me, getting pregnant was what I thought was a way to get out of this abusive home, because as many times as I had gone to my mother and talked about that, she just couldn't get herself out of it. And so I ended up myself in a very abusive relationship out in the world at 14 on my own, and only escaped that relationship at 16 years old, and was faced with a very difficult decision to leave my child behind, and just out of survival and desperation. So it was difficult. It was very difficult. And so it wasn't until after I was out on my own with just no one. I didn't have anyone to turn to, just in sheer survival mode on my own at 16, that I found Wayne Dyer. And he was a big influence in my life, a big mentor. And he helped me to see that people's approval of me was none of my business, to start learning and changing the way that I thought, because our thoughts create our reality. And really helped me to guide me into a direction of just really some self-help and self-care. And it really did change my life.
So, writing this book, was it painful? Was it cathartic? What was the journey like to relive all of that and then get to the end of it and actually see it in paper form? What was that journey like?
Yeah, it was an incredible journey. I knew from a very young age that I needed to write my story, but it just wasn't ready yet. And going through the plant medicine journey, I just knew that there was a message that I needed to get out. And so it took several years for me to really get to the place where I could be still. And so I took some time and went and stayed at my lake house and just kind of shut the world out, and began writing in February of 2014. I let my husband know I'll be back when this is finished. If it takes a year or 5 years, I've got to write this book. It's just something in my soul is just calling this to be put out into the world. And so I began the journey, and it was very, very difficult to go back and relive and really to see that little girl that I was, to recognize the pain and the struggles and the difficulties that she went through, and all of the obstacles, many difficult obstacles to overcome. She'd only finished the 8th grade. She was out in the world on her own. She didn't have any parents that were there to support her, and she didn't have an education or any money or resources. And she picked herself up out of sheer determination and got her education and became an entrepreneur and started a cleaning business and started investing in real estate. Then went on to the University of Michigan and graduated with honors and became a dental hygienist, and continued her career as that for a little while. And with the real estate investing, I became a realtor and was very successful there. But in my early 30s, I realized that all of these things were providing financial things and material things, but I still was yearning for something deeper inside. And I knew that I needed to go back to grad school. And I became a psychotherapist, which was my passion, to help others, because Wayne Dyer was a psychotherapist and he really helped me. And there was also a psychotherapist that helped me when I was such a young girl to realize that the past didn't define me, and that I could create a brighter future if I just made some different decisions. And so, yeah, so that was my path, and it led me on a lot of journeys. And so, in writing this book, I was able to look back and see all of the things that I was able to do, how strong I was. And, there was a lot of pain reliving, giving up my daughter. Writing that chapter was really, really difficult, going through the pain and the agony of all the abuse that I endured. It was very hard, but it was so healing. It just gave me a new perspective, and it really allowed me to get in touch with my inner child and to really give her love, attention, and allow her to speak her truth and be honest and not worry about what anybody else and the world thought about it. It
So
was powerful.
absolutely. So other than Wayne Dyer, who has been kind of that inspirational force that's allowed you to overcome the trauma to navigate professionally to this point where you have found your calling in life?
There's a lot of people along the way. I think, Wayne Dyer was a huge influence on me. Louise Hay was another one, just really looking at things from a more positive perspective. Getting involved in the metaphysical field and the spiritual aspects, was really helpful to me. Um, but I think really it was just listening to my inner voice, just really listening to what was calling me and knowing that we are divine beings and that we have this inner guide within us. But so often we don't slow down enough to listen to that gut feeling, to listen to that inner wisdom. And for me, that is what was the guiding compass of my life, is really listening to that. And I just knew that I wanted to overcome the poverty of the past. And so that drove a lot of my behaviors and my success. And I became very successful. I attained all of my dreams by my late 30s and became financially independent. And, went on to open a counseling and wellness center that's one of the largest counseling and wellness centers in Southwest Virginia. And I help other therapists become successful and help so many in our community. But within me, I just knew at midlife, I just kind of found this deep wound within me that had never been healed. And so, just really taking the time and finding a way to really tap into that and really to do the deep work that needed to be done was is really the hallmark of my healing for sure.
So when that alarm clock goes off in the morning, what propels you to do all of this work at a high level? Because being in the therapy world, you have to kind of get into the darkness that people have. And I'm sure that can ring a lot of bells because you've gone through trauma. What is it that you do to protect yourself and to do this job at a high level along with taking care of your own soul?
I think meditation is very important, doing self-care. I have a morning routine. I get up very early. I take time to spend in quiet meditation, and just really take care of myself, making sure that I prepare myself for the day, making sure that I recognize what is mine and what is others. I think what's especially rewarding to me, having gone through so much trauma, is to be able to hold space for folks who have also had difficulties in their life and not take on their trauma, just to be able to hold space and reflect back and honor their journey and honor their story and their truth, and just allow them to process and be with what is happening in the moment in the therapy session. It's just profoundly amazing, and it just is so rewarding. And it makes a really it, it's so rewarding in my day when I can see people gain insights, understandings, and little light bulbs go off in their head, and they recognize that there is hope for a brighter future, that you can change the direction of your life. And because I have done it and I have overcome so much, it does help inspire others to know that anybody can do it. If someone as young as I was catapulted out into the world and was able to become successful and find a journey towards healing, they can do it too. And so I'm their biggest cheerleader. And so for me, it's just inspirational work to help change lives. And it is my passion.
So I'm curious, you've obviously evolved quite a bit. You've overcome a lot of obstacles and done a lot in your life. But what's been the key to your healing? Has it been forgiving what's happened to you, what people have done? What has been the key, the backbone to you finding the strength to overcome all of that and become who you are today?
Wow, forgiveness is absolutely the biggest thing that you can do for yourself. It allows you the freedom to let go of the past, no longer allowing that to guide the direction of your life. Holding unforgiveness is like having a massive emotional weapon that you're turning upon yourself while the other person is out living their lives. And it also takes up an awful lot of real estate in your mind, And freedom is really, really what most people are looking for, and forgiveness is the key to that. Not only forgiving others, but especially being able to forgive yourself, to recognize that you did the very best that you could at the time, and having some compassion and caring for that that inner child, that younger part of yourself that really went through the difficulties and struggles. And so for me, freedom, the freedom from all of the pain and the suffering began with beginning to forgive myself. And I think it's a key element in healing. And I think another very important aspect is being able to go back within and look at what you're feeling, what's triggering you, what emotions are coming up regularly and often, that often drive the vehicle of our lives, and to be able to slow down enough to go within and to recognize that, to say, oh, what is it that you're feeling today, what's going on in there, and to be able to slow down enough to hear that little inner child and ask them, instead of what's wrong, to ask them what happened to you and what's the earliest time that you remember feeling this deep feeling, whatever that is, if it's pain, loneliness, sadness, depression, and then being able to let them know, hey, I'm here. I'm your older, higher, wiser self, and I'm here to help hold space for you, and I see you, and I recognize the pain that you're going through. Being able to do that has really changed my life. It changes everything. It changes your reactions and your responses, because you begin to heal that wound within, and you're able to see things from a new perspective, and you don't hold on to all of that pain, because you're validating it, you're recognizing it. And that is where I feel that a lot of my healing has come from.
The one thing that can change the trajectory of our lives too are these random moments of kindness that humans do to each other. What's been one of the nicest things that someone's ever done for you that's made a big impact, maybe created a fork in the road that you didn't realize at the time, but it turned into that?
My husband, I got married at 18 years old. We were very young. But he has made all the difference in my life. He was the support that I needed. Both of us, it came from kind of similar backgrounds. His father died when he was 7 years old, and he too became a parentified child. And just by fate, we met one another. And, he has been the most kind, compassionate, loving, caring person that I could ever meet. And he has always given me space, been that constant confidant to allow me to process my thoughts and feelings, to be my biggest supporter, and to encourage me in all of my dreams and ideas, and has been my partner along the way, every step throughout my life. And, we've been married 39 years, going on 40 years. And he is the kindest, most compassionate person. And I am just so grateful that he came into my life.
So let's go back to 18. Let's say you have a dream tonight and you walk up to that 18-year-old version of you and you have a coffee table book and it's the life that you've lived, the life you've orchestrated so far, and you handed it over. Would that young version of you believe that this is the life that you live now?
Well, I've lived an incredible life. I overcame an awful lot of obstacles. I think she would be exhilaratedly excited about the life that I have lived, and just really have a lot of hope for her future, because it has been an amazing journey. And yeah, I think she would be just incredibly proud of me for everything that we've overcome.
So speaking of being proud of everything that you've accomplished and evolved to and become, what are you the proudest of?
You know what? I think it's being able to heal the wounds within, and to be able to go back, and only recently to be able to show up in my daughter's life in a way that I can hold space for her, that I can truly see her, that I don't hold the guilt and shame that I carried as a wounded mother all these many, many years. And, so often I made mistakes in trying to fix her, because I felt like that I broke her. And instead, showing up with love and compassion, just accepting her exactly where she is, loving her for who she is and the strong woman she's become. It has made all the difference in my life, for sure.
So everyone has a perception of you. You have all these different people and roles, family, friends, clients, readers, patients, everybody that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a very strong, loving, caring, compassionate person who wants to give back to others, to help others to find the light within them so that they can live a true and authentic life, to overcome the obstacles and the difficulties of the past and recognize that those things don't define them, to be a voice for those that don't feel like their voice can be heard, and help to give them encouragement and power so that they can speak their truth. Just to bring love and light into the world. I think that is the legacy I would love to leave behind.
So I think sometimes in our family lineages, we wonder where things happened, whether it was something that was good or something that was dysfunctional. Is there somebody in your family lineage that you never got to meet that you would love to get an idea of who they are, that might illuminate a little bit more of your family bloodline?
Yeah, I think it would be my grandmother. She had 14 children.
Wow.
She grew up in the coal fields of Kentucky and was married very young. Um, and she really just lived in that deep poverty and survival mode. And, I just would really like to understand, like what happened, what was going on, what was her hopes and desires, what would she have liked to have seen for her life? What made her decide to have 14 children? I mean, especially being in such dire poverty, I think that would really help me to understand a lot more about the family dynamics. I have so many cousins, I mean, 100 cousins, somewhere near that number anyway. And, I just, wondered what her vision was for her life and what she had hoped for. And if she even thought more of ever leaving the coal fields of Kentucky. I know so many people kind of get stuck in those places and don't know that there is hope for a brighter future. But yeah, just kind of really understanding what her life was like and, what drove the decisions for her would be really interesting. And I'm sure it would help me to understand my mother and some of the things that she went through and the decisions that she made, for sure.
Absolutely. So the wonderful new book, The Child I Left Behind, it's behind you. If anybody wants to get a copy or if they want to reach out to you, they have any questions, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
To AnjaliaMcGoldrick.com. It's ANJALIAMCGOLDRICK.com. And, this story is a beautiful portrayal of what is possible no matter where you start in life, no matter what you've been through. There is always hope for a brighter future.
Absolutely. I totally get it. What a wonderful, uplifting story. Thank you so much for your time today. Best of luck with the book. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me. It was a great honor.
Yes, absolutely.